All right, so my internship, unlike many of my peers, was down in Port Orford, which is on the southern coast. You can actually see it. It's around right there. So it's about 3 hours south of here. And then this is all the field station crew down at the Port Orford field station. Um, and yeah, so we'll get into my project. So first, I want to start a little bit more with what is, what Port Orford and a bit more about it. So Port Orford's, like I said, 3 hours south of Newport. It's a pretty small town. It's got a population of around 1,100 people, and it's a pretty tight-knit fishing community. This is what their kind of their cultural sense down there. But in recent times, they're having trouble on the economic side of things, especially with changing environmental conditions down in the fishing aspect. So they're have a little bit of future work to do with regards to incorporating some tourism down there. They do have some already. So one of those is South Coast Tours, which is kind of a kayak whale watching tour, or you can go on a Zodiac and go out and around the area around Port Orford and go whale watch. But it's unique, Port Orford, because it has this crane system that lowers every single fishing boat from the fleet into the water. So it limits the size of every boat at the port, which keeps it a pretty small and local fishery. And so I think this is one of two. It's very, very unique due to the shallow nature of the harbor. It didn't used to be that way, but due to some construction, especially with the jetty, it changed from being a deep water harbor to being a shallow water harbor. And so now they have to use this crane and have a periodically ship come in and dredge things. So getting into my adventures over the summer. So I did a independent research project as well as helping out with my other peers as part of Redfish Rocks community team. So we did outreach and some other outdoor adventures with various organizations like Pisco, and then helping with ODFW's Smurf project at the Marine Reserve, which is Redfish Rocks. And you can see Redfish Rocks in the photo here. This is from just outside the field station. So you'll see right there, that kind of grouping of rocks, that is the Redfish Rocks Marine Reserve. And that is where ODFW has their Smurf program, which I will touch on a little bit later. So just getting into some of the field work that was done throughout the course of my internship, a lot of it was doing freediving. And part of that was doing freediving for Smurfs, which stands for the Standardized Monitoring Unit for the Recruitment of Fish. Essentially, ODFW put out, when they created the Marine Reserve back in 2012, they have 8 different basically bales that they put fake kelp in, and it mimics the understory of kelp so that fish will recruit to it, and we can see how many fish are recruiting to the reserve and where they're coming from, doing genetic work here at Hatfield. And so in order to collect those, we have to free dive about 10 feet down, out by the Marine Reserve, down 10 feet down, collect the Smurf, which is about this long and cylindrical, with a net, which you'll see in a later photo, and take it off the attachment, put a new one on, and then do that 7 more times, and then go back to the lab and process everything. Another aspect of the field work was doing urchin collection for a member of the Redfish Rocks community team. And his project was looking at urchin GI as an indicator of ecosystem health. So we would go out to various different sites in the southern Oregon coast and collect around 30 urchins, so free dive down and pick those up. We also, in the beginning, did a few intertidal surveys, helping Pisco with some of their work out at Cape Falcon, and then also just some of our own work, just going around the tide pools. I also occasionally help the whale team. So I believe it's the Gem Lab, sometimes just going on the hill and helping them with finding whales as part of their research project down there. And we also had quite a few strandings, one of which was a dolphin, and the other one happened last week, which was a salmon shark. And here's some of the photos of this. So as you can see in this photo right here with the Zodiac, that is the net that we use to collect the Smurfs. And then if you kind of make it out inside the net on the left side is the Smurf itself. Then here's a photo of myself and Gabe, who's one of the members of the Redfish Rocks community team. And this is us on the Smurf boat during one of the first weeks. And then this bottom photo corner with the Oregon Kelp Alliance dive float is us at South Cape Ergo, where we were doing some more urchin collection. And these are just more photos of what we did. So about 2 weeks ago, the conditions in Port Orford were absolutely incredible for freediving. And we were able to get visibility like that on the far right photo. And we got some really good videos of all the baby fish, and it was very exciting to have visibility that large. And then on the right over here, this is the urchin gonad density lab work, where we were cracking them open and then taking their uni out and then weighing them and then comparing that to the weight of the urchins themselves to get an indicator. Yes, they smell awful. So if you do this, have some proper ventilation. So now another large aspect of my internship was doing community outreach. So part of that community outreach was tabling at the Port Orford Visitor Center, where we would set up a table and talk about the Marine Reserve and what research we're doing there, as well as past projects and just what's going on in general. Other outreach that we did was through our social media campaign, our social medias. So we'd post photos of our field work or when we were tabling, as well as Redfish Rocks Day up at the Oregon Coast Aquarium here in Newport a few weeks ago, where we were tabling all day, telling people about who we are and what we do. And also a lot of spontaneous conversations. The field station's pretty tight-knit in terms of everyone who's there, as well as the community as a whole. So you'll get a lot of people just randomly walking in, you just start talking to them about your project, or like this last week, going down to the beach and picking up a stranding and then just talking to people on the beach about it and what we do. So these are some of the photos of the stranding. So this past week, we had this salmon shark on the right, which was just driven up yesterday. And then the other photo is a rough-toothed dolphin that washed up on shore. That was a couple of weeks ago. And I believe that one was used in a dissection recently for one of the classes here at Hatfield. So now this is my independent research project. So it's looking at lingcod movement behavior with a goal or emphasis on improving marine reserve effectiveness, as well as just understanding what is happening with lingcod at the reserve and developing a better baseline level of knowledge for us to continue future projects. So the purpose of this, we wanted to find out, so if you look at this photo over here, you can kind of get a map of the boundaries of the marine reserve in red, which is no take allowed. So you cannot catch anything, you can't take anything, there's nothing. Whereas the blue boundary is the marine protected area, and there is take allowed, but is only for salmon by troll and crabbing. And so what we wanted to find out within that red box was, where are the lingcod? Where do they spend the majority of their time? As well as what are there any potential movement patterns or behaviors that we can see that they exhibit, as well as potential assessment of some of the marine reserve effectiveness, because if we're seeing very minimal levels of lingcod inside the reserve, or we're seeing them on the periphery a lot, that could put in some future research looking at, are they actually in the reserve enough to be protected? And also the effect that these lingcod are having on other species in the reserve, as well as kind of a connected point to that, the economics for the local fishermen, ensuring that we are conserving the species for the species good and the ecosystem health, but as well as recognizing that they're a important fishery and they can make the people of Port Orford quite a large amount of money. They're a big portion of the economy there in the fishing industry. So we want to make sure we preserve both of that. So some of the methods we used is passive acoustic monitoring. So that's, if you guys don't know, essentially it's this photo on the far right. You have a receiver placed in the reserve, and then you put a tag in a fish or whatever your animal you're studying. The animal then will swim past the receiver and give off a ping. The receiver will pick the ping up, and then it'll be recording that as data, the date, the time, and then potential if you have the depth sensor, but it will give you what animal did it as well. And so that data was collected in 2021, which was part of the seismic sound gun surveys that were going all along the coast here. And so we were able to get access to some of that data and then go use that in Excel and RStudio to manipulate it in order to create graphs and kernel density estimations, as well as just some heat maps of where they are in the reserve. We also used a program called Fathom Central, which is this very useful program. You can kind of see it here in the bottom picture. It essentially is just a one-stop shop for acoustic telemetry. So you can get all your receiver maps in there, you can look at all the animal data, and it just gives you a quick overview of what is happening without having to code or put it into Excel in order to see a graph. As well as other methods with the field work, like right here, where we would attach weights to dive floats and then go down and dive for stuff. So what we found, at least right now, is we see seasonal switches between regions of the marine reserve. So if you see this kind of outline right here, this is actually all the stations that were deployed at the reserve. There's 32 of them. There was 34, but 2 of them were lost to ocean conditions. And so basically this kind of map you can see here is around about the border and the region of the reserve itself. And what we found is that on the lower picture, you can see the brown is the highest density. And so they tend to hang out in very high relief rocky habitat. So just a lot of boulders, a lot of gravel, a lot of places for lingcod to hide. And they will switch. So it's in around mid June, they will go from this top right corner right about here, and then they will transition south through the reserve, and they will hang around here until around mid-October before going back. And what we believe that to be was the likely cause is, at least when going back in October, is their mating behavior. They go closer to shore to mate, and so it is likely that when they go back to the northeastern portion, that's what they're doing. So we have a little video here. Hopefully it'll play, but this gives you kind of a more interactive kind of understanding of what's happening. So all the red pings, which are a little hard to see, but those are detections of lingcod, and so you can kind of get a sense of what is happening at the reserve throughout the course of this time frame. The larger detection, the larger circles are more detections. And so you can see right about now in October, they go from the south back into the north. And so that's kind of the pattern we're seeing. And so looking at future research, we want to make a more expansive, larger receiver array, not just in Redfish Rocks itself, because that's where all of our stations were, but we would also like to include other regions outside the reserve so that we can get a more holistic picture of what's happening just in the region generally. And then here are my acknowledgements. So thank you to Steve Scientific for helping fund this, as well as Hatfield for letting me crash here for a few nights. A big thank you to Port Orford Field Station. Awesome people, awesome group. It was amazing time, as well as some help from Taylor Chappell from the Big Fish Lab, who helped us get access to the seismic sound gun data. And then I would like to give a few shout outs to everyone at the field station, and then also my mentors, Tom Calvanese and then Caroline Rice, who are an absolute gem. They were great. I absolutely loved it. They were super helpful. And yeah, it was a great time.